Hey Army, it's Taehyung. I wanted to sit down and share something really personal with you all today. I've been holding on to this story for a long time, and it feels like the right moment to finally open up. I hope you'll stay with me through this journey. The turning point came unexpectedly. It wasn't a confrontation, nor was it a grand declaration. It was subtle, almost invisible, but undeniable. I realized that the world I had carefully built around music, fans, and fame could not shield me from the consequences of my choices. Public curiosity morphed into speculation, speculation into rumors, and rumors often became truths in the eyes of strangers. Every headline, every post, every whisper about my personal life threatened to distract from the love I was nurturing. I never planned to tell this story, not to the public, not to the cameras, not even to the fans who have been with me through every era of my life. But a moment arrives in every person's journey when staying silent feels heavier than speaking up. This is that moment for me. And if you are watching this right now, I want you to know something. Everything I'm about to say comes from my heart, without filters, without scripts, and without fear. Hey Army, it's Taehyung. For years, you've seen me as an artist, a performer, a member of BTS, and someone who carries a smile even when my shoulders were shaking under the weight of expectations. But what you rarely get to see is the part of me that longs for connection, softness, and a life beyond the cameras. Someone who wants to be loved as a human being, not an idol. I'm here today because I reached a point where the two worlds, the one on stage and the one inside my chest, finally collided. And that collision changed everything, including my relationship with my family. It all started during one of the loneliest winters of my life. BTS was on a break between promotions, and I finally had time to breathe, yet that breath felt cold, empty, and strangely painful. I would wake up in the morning and feel unsure about where I belonged. There were days when I sat in my living room with the lights off, just listening to the quiet buzzing of the heater as if it were the only thing reminding me that time was still moving. I had everything a person could dream of, and yet something essential was missing. I found myself writing songs I never finished, humming melodies that faded halfway, sketching faces I imagined but didn't recognize. And then, one day, this is the part I never talked about. I decided to step outside my world for a moment, not as V, not as an idol, not as someone watched by millions, just as Kim Taehyung, a human being who wanted to help someone somewhere in any small way. That's how I ended up volunteering quietly at a small community center near the outskirts of Seoul. No one there cared about fame, cameras, or social media. People were too busy living, helping, surviving, laughing at things that didn't need to trend online. I felt anonymous for the first time in years. And honestly, it was refreshing, almost healing. That's also where I met her. She wasn't dressed like a celebrity. She didn't try to stand out. She didn't even look nervous around me because she didn't know who I was at first. She was organizing boxes of donations with her hair tied messily, a pencil tucked behind her ear, and a small frown on her face because the labels kept falling off the containers. I remember thinking she looked like a scene from a movie, not because she was glamorous, but because she was real, authentic, untouched by the world I lived in. She hummed a soft tune as she worked, and I recognized it instantly, an old jazz melody I loved. It made me smile without even realizing it. She turned to me when she caught the sound of my footsteps and greeted me with the simplest, warmest hi. No shrieking, no gasping, no shaking hands. Just a normal greeting from a normal woman living a normal life. Something about that felt grounding, as if I'd just found a hidden doorway back to myself. Over the next few weeks, she and I crossed paths more often. We weren't flirting, we weren't trying, we were simply existing in the same space, doing the same small acts of kindness. She talked about her dreams with a kind of sincerity that felt rare these days. She helped elderly visitors with patience that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. She laughed softly at her own mistakes. She listened, really listened when people talked. And for the first time in years, I found myself opening up not as Taehyung the idol, but as Taehyung the person. She never asked about fame or concerts or awards. Instead, she asked me things like, "What makes you feel at peace lately?" And "Is there something you're afraid to lose?" Those questions sank into me, stirring parts of my heart I didn't know were still alive. But deep inside, I also sensed something dangerous, something unpredictable, something that would eventually force me to choose between the life I had built and the life I secretly wanted. I didn't tell anyone about her, not my members, not my managers, not even my closest friends. I kept her safe inside the quiet parts of my world, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I'd be allowed to love someone without the noise of fame crushing everything. But fate doesn't work that way. Not for people like me. My family found out long before I was ready to tell them, and what came next changed everything. When I entered my parents' living room that night, I could feel the tension before I even sat down. The air was thick, like the room itself knew we were about to have a conversation that would change everything. My mom folded her arms, trying not to look emotional, and my dad sat quietly, his expression unreadable. My sister avoided my eyes like she already knew what was coming. And me? I stood there feeling a mixture of determination and fear. Fear of hurting the people I loved, but also fear of losing someone even more precious to me. My dad was the first to speak. His voice was calm, but too calm. Taehyung, are you really sure about her? That question hit like a blunt knife, not enough to wound instantly, but enough to bruise deep inside. I nodded slowly, almost instinctively. Yes, I whispered, I'm sure. But the moment I said it, everything seemed to explode at once. My sister immediately leaned forward, her words sharp. Oppa, you barely introduced her to us. We don't know anything. How can you make a decision this big so suddenly? My mom's voice followed, trembling. Taehyung, we just want what's best for you. People will talk. What if she's not ready for your world? You know how cruel it can be. I understood their fears. I lived in that world every day under spotlights that burn more than they shine, under judgments that arrive before truth is even spoken, under expectations that feel heavier than the microphone I hold on stage. But despite all that, there was something no one else seemed to understand. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace with someone, real peace. Not the temporary comfort of applause or the fleeting affection from millions of fans. A different kind of comfort, a quiet one, a human one. Still, it hurt to see the doubt on my family's faces. I wish they could see her through my eyes, the warmth she carried, the way she listened without judgment, the way she made me feel like Kim Taehyung the person, not Taehyung from BTS. But how could I explain all of that in one conversation? How could I make them understand that this wasn't some impulsive decision? It was something I felt in my bones. My dad sighed deeply, louder than he probably intended. There are consequences, he said slowly. Marriage isn't just about love, it's about responsibility, public reaction, your career, your team, the future you've worked for. Those words hit harder than I wanted them to. My career, my team, my future. I had always made decisions with those things in mind, but this time I wanted to make a decision for myself, for my happiness. I took a deep breath and sat on the edge of the couch, leaning closer to them. Dad, Mom, I know you're worried. I know you think everything is moving too fast, but I've thought about this more than you realize. I'm not choosing recklessly. I'm choosing someone who makes me better, someone I'm willing to protect. My mom's eyes softened, but fear still lingered. Do you really believe she can handle everything that comes with being with you? That question stayed in my head longer than I expected. I remembered the late night phone calls when she stayed awake with me after long practices. The way she encouraged me during my quiet, anxious moments. The way she never tried to change anything about me. The way she accepted me, even the messy parts I kept hidden from the world. She never once asked for anything in return. She just stayed. That was enough for me. Yes, I answered firmly. I believe she can, and I believe she's worth fighting for. Silence filled the room, not aggressive, but heavy. My dad finally stood up and walked toward the window. He didn't say anything for a long time, and I could sense he was wrestling with his thoughts. When he finally turned around, his eyes were filled with concern, not anger. Taehyung, if you move forward with this, everything changes. Your life won't belong just to you anymore. Are you ready for that? Truthfully, I didn't know if anyone was ever fully ready, but I was ready enough to try. I'm ready, I said quietly, because this time I'm choosing something for myself. My sister exhaled loudly. Oppa, it's not that we don't trust you. We're scared. You love too deeply. You give everything. What if she breaks you? I looked up with a faint smile. Then I'll heal, just like I always have. But I won't let fear stop me from choosing something good. Even with all my explanations, I could still sense the resistance in the room. It wasn't going to disappear overnight. They weren't villains. They weren't trying to control my life. They were scared of losing me to someone they barely knew. They wanted to protect me, and I respected that, but I also needed them to understand that love, true love, doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. As the conversation continued, the voices softened, not fully accepting, not fully comfortable, but softer. They were listening. That was a start. And I held on to that because sometimes understanding begins with just one moment of silence between arguments. But just when things seemed to calm down, my phone vibrated. Her name appeared on the screen. Are you okay? She texted. I stared at that message while the world around me slowed. My heart tightened in my chest. She didn't know what was happening. She didn't know my family was questioning everything. She didn't know they were afraid of her. And in that moment, I felt guilt sharp and sudden. She didn't deserve to be doubted. She didn't deserve to be compared to my career, my fame, my responsibilities. I excused myself from the conversation and stepped outside for a breath of air. The night was cool and the sky was dim. I typed back slowly, "I'm okay, don't worry." But the truth was, the more I talked to my family, the more I realized something painful. Loving her wasn't the problem. Convincing the world that was the hard part. And even though I didn't know how everything would unfold, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how important, decide my future for me. Because for the first time in a very long time, my heart had spoken louder than my fears, and I wasn't going to ignore it. The air outside my family's house felt colder than I remembered. Maybe it was because my mind was crowded with thoughts that didn't know where to settle. I stared at my phone for a long moment, wondering whether to explain everything to her. But I didn't. Not yet. I didn't want her to feel guilty or responsible for the tension between me and the people I loved. So instead, I slipped my phone back into my pocket and leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. Inside, I could hear faint murmurs, my mom talking to my sister, my dad pacing quietly. They probably thought I needed space, and they were right. But even as I stood outside, I felt the weight of their concerns pressing against me like gravity. It wasn't just resistance, it was fear. Fear of losing me, fear of change, fear of the unknown. I understood it more than I wanted to admit. I walked a few steps away from the door and sat on the outdoor bench. The wooden surface was cold, grounding me. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle in. It was strange on stage. I faced tens of thousands of people without hesitation. But here, with my own family, my heart felt like it had been twisted into a knot. The door creaked open. My dad stepped outside. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood next to me, hands in his pockets, looking up at the sky the same way he used to when I was a kid and we'd sit outside after dinner. Those were simpler times. Back then, the biggest worry was whether I would finish my homework before bedtime. Now, everything was heavier. "I'm not against your happiness," he finally said, his voice quiet but sincere. "You know that, right?" I nodded. "But being who you are, everything that happens in your life echoes louder. People will criticize, they'll judge her, they'll judge you." He paused. "Are you ready to protect her from that?" That question stayed in me like a heartbeat because it wasn't hypothetical, it was real. And it was something I had been thinking about long before this conversation. I knew the world I lived in wasn't gentle. I knew love wasn't simple for someone like me. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. "I don't want to hide my happiness forever," I said. "I've spent years hiding everything, my fears, my sadness, my tiredness, and I can do that. I've always done that. But hiding the person I love isn't something I want to repeat." My dad sighed softly. "Love can be the biggest strength or the deepest wound." "I know," I replied, "but she's worth the risk." He didn't respond right away. He looked at me, really looked at me like he was seeing not just his son, but the man I was trying to become. A man who wanted something real. You've grown up, he said. Sometimes I forget that. I smiled faintly. Sometimes I forget too. When he walked back inside, I stayed alone for a little longer. I needed that moment. Just me, the dark sky, and the quiet thoughts I could finally organize. When I felt ready, I stood up and went back in. My mom was sitting at the dining table, fingers intertwined, eyes a little red, not from anger but worry. My sister was next to her, and they both turned when I entered. My mom reached out and held my hand gently. Taehyung, we're not your enemies. I know, Mom. We just want to make sure you're safe, that your heart is safe. I sat down beside her. I know, and I love you for that. My sister leaned forward. Oppa, what makes her so special to you? There it was the question I hadn't truly answered yet. Not to them, not even to myself. I took a deep breath and let the memories guide me. She doesn't see me the way the world does, I said slowly. She doesn't care about the spotlight. She doesn't ask for anything. She listens. She understands silence. She knows when to talk and when to just exist next to me. And she never tries to make me someone I'm not. My mom's eyes softened. My sister looked thoughtful. I continued. With her, I can breathe. I don't feel like I'm performing. I don't feel like I'm trying. I'm just me. The room felt quiet again, but it felt different this time. It was no longer a silence filled with tension. It was softer, like they were beginning to understand. Not fully, not instantly, but slowly. My mom squeezed my hand. Love like that is rare. I know, I whispered. That's why I don't want to lose it. My sister nodded slowly. Oppa, we'll try to trust you, but we need to meet her properly. We need to know her, not just hear about her. I felt a small, warm relief. It wasn't acceptance, not completely, but it was a bridge, a beginning. Then my mom asked something I didn't expect. Have you told her that we're unsure? My breath caught. No, I admitted. I didn't want to scare her or hurt her. My mom looked at me with a gentle firmness. Taehyung, love is about honesty. If you want this to work, you need to let her know every part of this journey, even the uncomfortable ones. My chest tightened because she was right. I will, I said. I promise. As the night grew late, we talked more. Not arguing, talking. My dad joined again. My sister shared her worries. My mom shared her hopes. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And for the first time since the conversation started, I felt like we were moving towards something instead of pulling away from each other. When I finally returned to my apartment, the city lights blinked from afar, and the quiet hum of the night settled around me. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone. I knew what I had to do. I had to tell her everything, every fear, every concern, every word my family said. Because if I wanted her to be part of my future, she needed to understand the whole truth of my present. My hands trembled slightly as I typed the message. Can we talk? There's something important I need to tell you. I hit send. The reply came faster than I expected. A simple, I'm here, talk to me. But even in those few words, there was a world of understanding, a willingness to listen, to be patient, to hold my hand through a storm I wasn't sure I could navigate. I smiled faintly at the screen. Just reading it made the tension in my chest ease slightly. I took a deep breath and began. I told her everything about my family's concerns, about their fear that love would expose us both to judgment, about the pressure I felt as someone the world watches. I didn't hold back. Every word was raw, unfiltered, because I needed her to see the truth, the real me, not the Taehyung that appeared flawless on stage or charming in interviews. Just me. Her responses were calm, supportive. She didn't try to minimize the situation or reassure me with empty promises. She asked questions, the kind that showed she wanted to understand, not just hear. And as I typed, I realized something. The fear I had felt for weeks wasn't just about my family, it was about risking her trust, about the fragility of love itself. After a long conversation, we agreed to meet in person the next day, just the two of us. No stage, no fans, no cameras, just us. I couldn't remember the last time I felt that kind of anticipation. Not nervousness, but a steady, quiet excitement. The kind that made you feel alive in a way that fame and applause never could. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual, even for my hectic schedule. I went to the kitchen, brewed a cup of coffee, and sat by the window. The sunlight spilling into the room reminded me of a line I once read. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. I was trying again. When she arrived, the air between us was calm but heavy with unspoken words. She smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile that seemed to absorb all the noise of the world. I stood and we embraced for a long moment. That hug wasn't just comfort, it was reassurance. A silent promise that whatever came next, we'd face it together. We walked slowly through a nearby park. The crisp morning air carried the faint scent of winter leaves, and the soft crunch beneath our feet punctuated the rhythm of our conversation. We talked about ordinary things first: music, books, the mundane little details of life. But eventually, I knew I had to confront the deeper topic. I need to be honest, I said, stopping to face her. My heart pounded, but my voice didn't waver. My family, they don't fully understand. They're worried about us, about the world we live in. And I can't say I blame them, but I also can't ignore my heart. She reached for my hand. Her grip was gentle but steady. I know I don't expect them to understand everything right away, but I trust you, Taehyung. That's enough for me. Her words struck me in a way I didn't expect. Enough. Just enough to give me courage. Enough to let me believe that love could survive judgment, survive misunderstanding, even survive fear itself. We sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. Ducks glided across the water, and for a moment everything felt simple and perfect. And I realized that her presence, the honesty between us, the quiet moments of shared smiles was worth every risk, every sleepless night, every tear, every tense conversation with my family. I don't want to hide anything from you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Even when it's hard, even when it's scary. I don't want you to, she replied. I don't want us to live in fear. I want us to live in truth, together. The words settled in me like a warm wave, and I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in months. She understood not just the public Taehyung, but the private one, the one who sometimes felt small, overwhelmed, and uncertain, the one who loved deeply but feared judgment. We spent hours like that, talking, walking, laughing softly, and as the day turned to evening, I knew I had to face my family again. But this time, I felt stronger. Not because I had all the answers, but because I had her by my side. Returning home, I braced myself for the conversation that would follow. My family was waiting, the tension in the air noticeable, but I didn't hesitate. I introduced her to them honestly, with the transparency we had cultivated throughout the day. I watched carefully, seeing my mom's guarded expression soften, my dad's initial reserve fade, my sister's curiosity shift to cautious acceptance. It wasn't perfect. Acceptance never is overnight, but it was a start, and in that moment I realized something crucial. Love doesn't always need permission. Sometimes it only needs honesty, courage, and patience. As the night drew to a close, I stayed up alone, reflecting. The path ahead would be challenging. There would be misunderstandings, arguments, and moments when doubt tried to creep in. But I also knew that love this strong, this honest, didn't break under pressure. It evolved, it deepened, it endured, and I was ready to fight for it. Because she wasn't just my choice, she was my truth. The days that followed were a mix of relief and tension. Relief because I had finally shared my truth with my family and introduced her to them. Tension because I knew acceptance doesn't happen overnight. My parents, though more open than I had expected, still carried subtle skepticism in their eyes, a cautious watchfulness as if they were waiting for a reason to doubt me. My heart ached knowing that the people I love most were struggling to fully understand my choice, but I reminded myself that love isn't a battle won in a single conversation. I started to notice small changes. My mom, who had been quiet and reserved during our first meeting, began asking questions about her hobbies, her interests, her background. Not probing, not judgmental, but curious. My dad, who often hid his emotions behind a stoic exterior, started to show hints of a softer side, sharing little anecdotes about his own past experiences in relationships, almost as if he were trying to connect across generations. My sister, always the bold one, offered small words of encouragement, like a subtle nod to the future they didn't yet fully grasp but were willing to witness. Meanwhile, my life in the public eye didn't pause. Fans and media outlets were always watching, scrutinizing every step, every word. I had grown used to the attention, but this was different. This was personal. This was my heart on display. I knew I had to navigate both worlds, protecting our private love while maintaining my responsibilities as Taehyung of BTS. And somehow, amidst the chaos, she remained my anchor. We found moments of peace wherever we could. A quiet cafe in the early morning before schedule started. A walk along the Han River at night when the city lights reflected in the water. Even simple phone calls during breaks in practice became our sanctuary. Each moment, no matter how small, reminded me why I had chosen this path. Choosing love was never about defiance. It was about authenticity, about embracing life fully without compromise. But there were difficult days too, days when rumors circulated online, fueled by speculation and half truth. Headlines questioned my choices, dissected my relationships, and sometimes suggested I was being selfish or reckless. It stung more than I expected. I wasn't doing this to make a statement or challenge anyone. I was doing it because my heart told me to. When those days came, I leaned on her. She never judged, never told me to ignore the world. Instead, she listened. She reminded me of my own strength and the reality that our love was not defined by public opinion. The world will always have something to say, she told me softly one evening as we sat in the quiet of a hotel garden. But that doesn't mean you have to live by it. You define your own life, Taehyung, and I'm here with you. Hearing that, I felt a calm determination settle over me. I realized something profound. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to keep moving forward despite it. Choosing love, especially in a life so public, was the ultimate act of courage, and I was ready to be brave. One afternoon, my father and I had a long, unexpected conversation. We sat on the rooftop of our family home, the city sprawling below us. He didn't speak immediately, just observed me silently, his hands clasped in front of him. Finally, he said, Taehyung, I see how serious you are. I see how much she means to you. His words were simple, but they carried weight. It was an acknowledgement I had been waiting for. He didn't offer unconditional approval yet, but there was respect, a recognition of my autonomy. And in that moment, I realized that even the toughest hearts can soften with time, honesty, and persistence. Through all of this, music remained my solace. Songwriting became a mirror to my emotions. Every melody, every lyric carried pieces of my journey, my fears, my hopes, my love. Sharing these songs with my bandmates, with my team, even with fans, felt like a quiet rebellion against the notion that personal life must be sacrificed for public perception. My music spoke truths I sometimes struggled to voice aloud. Evenings often found us together, sharing meals and quiet conversation. We discussed dreams, not just for ourselves, but for the life we wanted to build together. She had ideas, ambitions, a vision of life that intertwined with mine without diminishing it. It wasn't always easy balancing careers, expectations, and personal desires, but we approached it as a partnership. Every challenge became a shared experience. Every joy multiplied because we celebrated it together. And yet, I knew the journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, moments when my family might falter in understanding, moments when media scrutiny would feel unbearable, and moments when doubt would creep in quietly. But now, I faced those moments with a newfound confidence because I had chosen love deliberately, with my eyes wide open, because I had chosen honesty, because I had chosen her. As I lay in bed each night, reflecting on the day, I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, not the fleeting satisfaction of applause or fame, but the deep contentment that comes from living truthfully. I knew there would be more storms, more challenges, more nights of uncertainty, but I also knew that love, authentic and fearless, was worth every struggle. Thank you, Army, for sitting with me through this story. Sharing this part of my life wasn't easy, but I felt it was important to be honest with you all. Life is full of choices, and some are harder than others. Love, family, dreams, they don't always line up perfectly. But I've learned that staying true to your heart is what ultimately brings peace. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this journey. Every challenge, every misunderstanding, every difficult conversation shaped who I am today. I've learned patience, resilience, and the quiet strength of conviction. I've learned that love is not just a feeling, it's an action, a choice, and sometimes a leap of faith. I want you to know, Army, that happiness isn't about pleasing everyone or meeting every expectation. It's about finding what matters most to you and nurturing it with care, respect, and honesty. For me, that meant choosing her as we move forward. I hope this story reminds you to embrace your own truth, follow your heart, and cherish the people who truly matter in your life. Life is fleeting, and the moments that count are the ones we live with sincerity. I hope my journey inspires you to be brave, to love deeply, and to never compromise on what feels right. Thank you again, Army, for your unwavering support, for loving me through everything, and for allowing me to share this part of my life. Your presence gives me strength, and your belief in me means more than words can say. I promise to continue giving my best, not only in music but in life, and to keep being someone who follows their heart, just like you encourage me to. With love, Taehyung.